one for venture, and there was probably
For venture.
we're gonna be here all night.
So I was ranked about 600 in the world for under 18s.
Under 13B's captain hockey. You could be 22, 23, and you can actually feel like you're already miles off the pace.
I didn't fit the mold that they wanted.
The world is in lockdown, and if I don't do it now, I'm definitely never going to do it.
We're building very close relationships with people across so many different areas of finance. If you can't read a room properly, I mean, you're not going to be invited back.
If you follow up, if you do what you're going to say, and people will respect that. And it will take you a long way.
And that's how you break into VC.
If you're in a really hot deal, how are you going to get yourself on the cap table?
Surely there's a way, which is what we're trying to do.
Which is what we're doing.
Making it fun and development at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever episode of the CF Div Sweeps podcast with me, your host, Rory Mason. To my left, I have the man who's raised millions of pounds for his own VC firm. But can he raise a roof on his first ever podcast? Ken, how you doing?
Doing all right. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for asking.
Love to hear it.
And opposite me is a man too pretty for radio, but not quite pretty enough for TV, which makes him perfect for podcasting. Josh, how are we doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, well, I just told him. We're 1 minute in and he's zoned out. We're off to a flyer. What a start. Guys, it's nice to see you both. I'm glad we're doing this.
We're here.
We're building.
After so long.
We're here. We're doing the podcast. I'm glad we're getting it done. But it's worth touching on what Div Sweeps is, how it came about, and what we want this to be, right? As you may know, Div Sweeps is something we're all involved in. Came about really at sort of Q4 last year, where there are a few different group chats floating about. I know you had made one for me when I moved to London, got involved in banking to introduce me to some other bankers in Canary Wharf. I know there's another one that we sort of made to introduce a few other people, and there was probably one for venture, and there was probably for
venture.
We're gonna be here all night. So Div Sweeps came about because Q4 last year there are a few different group chats. I know you'd made one for me to meet some bankers in Canary Wharf, and we thought we'd roll them into one and basically get everyone together in one big room, have some beers, have a good time, and see if we can make some connections. But Ken, let's get into your background and a bit more into how Div Sweeps came about.
Yeah, for sure. So there were a number of businesses that had approached me based on my previous relationships in fintech about potential exits. What does that look like? Where do they go for that kind of thing? Then I just kind of had those relationships based on interviews that I'd done before, and I kept the relationship, and then other individuals I knew from school, just based on the exit side. So I was able to kind of make those connections, and okay, well, if there's enough deal flow here, maybe there could be an M&A thing going on. After so many deals, and the rate of deals going through is not 90%, right? But what I did create was a large group, a lot of individuals in that space, and after so many times, we just kind of got around for a beer. Went really well, and people just made some good connection. We said maybe just make this a regular thing, and then we had A Club. We had our first one where we had our first sponsor, the illustrious U.S. Capital Group, which was nice. But but on myself specifically, from New York, started out in retail banking because democratization of financial services, financial literacy was like the thing. Quickly realized that's not the place to go for that kind of thing. The pandemic hit, came to London, did 2 masters, worked for 2 fintechs, bootstrapped and VC backed, and then had this foray into building this fund called Back Future out of the large B2B SaaS conference in Europe. It's been a wild ride so far.
And so your role in building out Back Future is on the deal flow side?
It's on every side. So I came on day 0. So like the day they asked me to join was the day that started. So developing processes, tech stack, screening, running all these concurrently, and then obviously VC relationships, and all this kind of goes into the GP, right? So that's kind of where I sit. Like the only thing that isn't necessarily a responsibility of mine is fundraising, but opportunistically I do fundraise because I'm here on the ground, so you do meet those individuals. That's kind of short of what I do on a day-to-day.
That's quite interesting, and it leads us into Josh, because you've also recently broken into VC.
Yes, mate. So I now work for Q Ventures. And so my background, I started in the commercial side of healthcare, and then explored a few other different verticals in the healthcare space, and then realized I kind of wanted to break into the finance world. So I was able to get in with the family office through pitching my paddle tennis business. After that, I then did some fundraising for some early stage companies, and getting involved, really saw the process of what that looked like and how these companies go about fundraising and the struggles that they were facing. And with my sales and business development background, I kind of found a bit of a niche in that space. And then I met Q Ventures and the guys there. So I've now joined them on the investor relations side. And yeah, it's great. Really enjoying it.
Nice. And that was very crisp and professional, but I'm trying to put this together because paddle's only recently come about. Are you trying to claim that you invented the sport?
No, mate. No, I was I was in the process of opening 2 paddle sites. So I already had loosely committed from an investor $250,000 for the first site. Okay. And then I was trying to scale it and expand it. And so that's why I was looking for further funding. So through my network of tennis, my background's tennis, so coaching a lot of very successful individuals, and I happened to meet this principal, this family office through the tennis world, and pitched him the business, and he was really focused on tech, so paddle wasn't necessarily for him, but he liked what I was about and said, look, would love to offer you a job. So
I mean, do you want to take this chance from one athlete to another?
Yes, mate.
Do you want to tell everyone your tennis background?
Absolutely. So I was always been an athlete my whole life. Started tennis a little later than other players.
Your whole life?
Mate, I was always active as a kid. But yeah, started tennis at 11, a bit later than usual. Then really started taking it seriously at around 14. And then went to a tennis academy full time, traveled Europe playing on the junior ITF tour. So I was ranked about 600 in the world for under 18s. I then got a scholarship to a Division 1 university in South Carolina called Furman. Played there for 4 years. And then in the summers I played, I guess you could say professionally, German league, which is great. So they paid me to play club matches for them, and I traveled around Germany playing prize money tournaments. And then realized, I wasn't good enough to play the slams. So let's focus kind of my efforts and my hard work and drive into the business world, and let's see how I can accelerate my career and get ahead from the skills that I've learned in the sporting world.
That's actually pretty impressive. So from starting age 11, you got to 650th in the world.
Yes, for under 18s. So
wow.
So not quite men's, but
but for your age bracket.
But it was still good for starting so late and achieving that was really impressive for me, at least. I was told that I would never do that, and I had a lot of negative feedback, but you got to channel it.
No, that is very impressive.
But yeah, just I think building as well on Div Sweeps, why it's so great, and the story of how we're getting together. I think, when I met Ken last year, we identified there wasn't really a strong community for younger people in finance, but we're all quite like-minded, and from now where we are with Div Sweeps, we've had a great time going to events together and hosting private meetups, and doing talks, and now starting this podcast. So I'm excited to see where it goes, but we've built some great friends and connections from it. So, and you, mate, what's your background?
Yes, in my background, look, I was quite boring in the sense I always knew I wanted to work in finance. So studied economics at university, was on a very well-trodden route, internshiped at a place called Brevin Howard David Gorton, which was awesome. They went fully systematic, and probably, to be honest, when I was 20, 21, should have realised, this is the future, and gone back to, or stayed on at uni and learned how to code and been a quant, but instead took a job at basically a really large sort of wealth investment management firm where they managed about 50 billion. And the really cool thing about that role was that you were a research analyst, but you also supported a partner. So I supported one of the biggest partners, and I helped them with the pitch documents, the portfolio management, placing trades. But I also did research on industrials and emerging markets. So yeah, took a lot of lessons from Brevin actually, because they were macro and systematic at the time. As I say, they're now just systematic. And and that macro background probably helped me a little bit because industrials and emerging markets, very cyclical and very reliant on the dollar, especially emerging markets. So did that for 4 years, had a good time, really enjoyed it, had some success. And then in December 2021, actually sort of wrote this article being like, markets are going to crash and there's going to be a big slowdown. Yeah, and realized that, there might be this slowdown and the job market might slow. And I thought, having been there 4 years, do I want to stay on for 2-3 more years and ride out the cycle? Or do I want to get a new opportunity while the going's good? And I got quite lucky that obviously Barclays private bank basically offered me this role where I take ownership of my own clients, so manage high net worth and ultra high net worth relationships. Got about 100 million in investments in my name. And yeah, sort of could take my analytical background and do a lot on the advisory side. So clients who want a bit more of a bespoke solution, they were the ones that I sort of got given when I joined. So I kept hold of some of those skills.
What a background.
Oh, yeah, I'd say so, yeah. What was the athlete part?
Under 13B's captain hockey. Yeah, I suppose moving on from our backgrounds onto perhaps more interesting things. So, I think for me, one thing I'm really keen to do with this platform is offer insight. And that is both from, I think you guys in this episode could touch on your non-traditional routes into VC, but also the next few episodes, we've got some guests coming on, thinking specifically of the guys coming next week who are sort of private equity partners in sports, so deal with, capital advisory or private equity in, football clubs. They're involved in some big sports deals. So like a really interesting and quite sexy area of finance. But what do you guys really want out of this podcast?
Kind of like you said, I know when I got into VC, it was, even though I didn't have an initial interest in it or like aspiration to be in VC, I think there was a level, it was pretty opaque. And even now I'm on this side of the table, I see a lot of people don't really understand it. So there's also that educational piece, but also, like you said, with the sports aspect, there's a lot of parts of finance that just not really trodden. And also, like, we have access to those people, so why not bring them to the forefront and allow, the viewers to really understand the different parts of it. It's not always, IB, it's not always private wealth, or it's not only like, just VC as this overarching term, so it's always just to shine a light on that kind of stuff.
There's so many different verticals in the finance world. I think even when I was looking to break in, my original thinking was, right, I'll go to healthcare, investment banking, and then maybe I could get into like VC or private equity down the line. That would be great. Then I, do my MBA, et cetera, but then as I've kind of got into the industry more and more, I've seen the exciting verticals that are in the finance sector, right? So some of our guests coming on are going to speak about these less common areas in the finance world, but in my opinion, the most exciting. And then also giving people insight into that. I think that's really going to be the differentiator of our podcast versus other finance podcasts. We're not just bringing on great guests, but also what their day-to-day looks like in their role and how some people can necessarily get into, how some people can actually get into those positions and what that looks like from a day-to-day. So just like our backgrounds, right? Very different, but our skills have kind of got us to this point in different ways. And
that's the thing too, right? You talk about exposure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I first got into banking, I was never really exposed to any of that kind of stuff. So my thought was like, I see bank branches, so this is probably it, I guess, right? And you move up from there. That is not what happens, you know? So it's like, going from there to fintech and now VC, now it's about exposure, and I just kind of want to share that experience, I
mean, people are exploring these different areas and noticing it now and seeing, okay, well, that seems more exciting than a traditional, okay, I do this for 2 years, then I go to the next spot. And even just the whole startup world, people working in startups and realizing, well, I'd love to see now the investing side of the startup world, and that's how they break into finance. And there's just so many different ways. So there really isn't not one shoe that fits all, right?
Shortly put, if you could think of it, there's probably a finance group behind it somewhere.
I think you touched on something briefly, which was quite interesting, which is, I think there's perhaps a bit of an analogy with career and sports now, in which they both seem to have encroached in terms of how young you have to start to be seen to be on the rails.
Yeah.
So like you said, it starts really at GCSEs and A-levels, but university, get on a spring week and then you get an internship at a certain investment bank. It needs to be a top investment bank. You then need to make sure you convert the internship to an offer. And you see how, like, you know, you could be 22, 23, which we'd all agree is young. And you can actually feel like you're already miles off the pace.
So I mean, yeah. So when I was looking to switch, I was 23, about to be 24. You know, I've got a great network through tennis, and I coach tennis to some MDs at investment banks and people who are very high up in their fields, in the finance world. And even me applying for like just summer internships for graduate programs, right? I was too far on. I didn't fit the mold that they wanted. I didn't go to a top school. I didn't major in finance. And it was really frustrating. So then I had to try and figure out different ways in which that I could get into it. But yeah, I agree with you. There's now so many different ways that I don't think people know about that I wish I knew, which I'm happy to share. But yeah, people just think, okay, finance, 2 years here, MBA, then I can go there. But it's not always the case if you do it well.
Ken, as someone who's also done it in non-traditional route, do you have any advice or like any thoughts on your journey?
You got to be very curious, and you have to be willing to like put yourself out there and like just not be an ass. I think that's kind of the whole thing. So when I started, you know, we go back to this whole two fintechs thing. The first thing I did was, well, I came to London, first of all. I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay here. So I ended up doing an unpaid internship just to break into fintech, break into a new market. This is in payment orchestration, something I knew nothing about and I learned about very quickly. And the CRO of this company was the local team lead for this conference, right? And when I moved on to my next company, which is VC backed, I mean, I joined just before Series A and Series B were done within 10 months of each other. And I think between the two of them,
that's quick. Yeah.
281 mil raised.
Wow.
Different times. This is
Like when capital was free.
Yeah, I mean, this is when we quarterly offsites in Greece and Istanbul.
Just like private wealth, mate.
So I kept up with that team, you know, try to set up partnerships, making introductions here and there. And they have this program where it's their founders meetup. So I set that up, and the CRO was like, hey, you went to the founder of the conference, you need to speak to this guy. He had this plan to do this thing, build this fund. And, you know, he was going to do it earlier, but the pandemic was going on. So it's like you talk about an in-person event, you really got to pivot in that sense. But again, going back to like, you know, taking that risk and doing things. I remember when my girlfriend during my undergrad was teaching English in Japan, spoke fluent Japanese. She's like, oh, you should come visit. I'm like, what? I have no business going over there. She's like, oh, there's a study abroad program in Hong Kong. You come here for 2 weeks, then New Year's you'll fly over to Hong Kong. I was like, who am I? How am I going to get this freaking approval? Long story short.
Sorry. Your girlfriend was in Japan, said come visit, and you said, I have no business.
Well, I mean, like,
Mags in the arena.
No, I mean, I'm like some kid from like, I don't know, New York City. Like, what do I know about like going abroad like that, right? Again, exposure. Maybe we come back to that. So I ended up getting, you know, a scholarship to go, got approved to go, spent 2 weeks in Japan, flew to Hong Kong over New Year's, which was nuts. And then I found myself in this crazy little like, you know those like closet apartments? I booked this random place in this random building in Mongkok. I'm like, where the hell am I?
And that's how you break into VC.
But like, I'm not. You know what? I'm not even gonna get into the room situation at that point. But yeah, so I did that. Long story short, I did Hong Kong, Japan twice. Did Singapore Institute of Management, Korea University. Did Thailand twice. And yeah, and it was a great experience. And I knew I wanted more of that, my life to be like that more. After banking, my school went to me and said, you deferred us for 2 years. If you do it again, you're going to lose your scholarship. And I was like, well, the world is in lockdown. And if I don't do it now, I'm definitely never going to do it. I hate what I do. And then I came to London. And so like from there, it's like no risk is too great, I guess.
To be honest, that's more than I knew. Bringing it back to a slightly more serious topic, and I think you slightly covered it, you know, broadly speaking. You know, you said sort of be helpable, but not in those terms. I think you said don't be an arse or something. Anything from your side? Like you touched on sort of tennis and sports helping you in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Has that been like a bit of an edge for you?
Oh, 100%. Tennis has opened doors for me in every role that I've got, really. So it's been all network based. I think people underestimate the power of their network, right? And no matter who you are or how early you are in your career or late in your career, always try and build your network more. Go to events, meet people, just put yourself out there. I think so many people are afraid to do that. But in the business world, it's such a great community, and I'm seeing that in the VC world. Like, so many people are willing to help out. It's just a fantastic space to be in. So for me, and what I would always say to individuals is network, but try and add value to the people that you're wanting to spend time with. So for me, that's been through tennis. So when I meet somebody, the first question I like to ask them is, are you a tennis player? Because I know immediately if they are, I can add value to them and their time. And therefore, I don't feel pressured that they're going to give me 30 minutes and they're really throwing me a bone, right? It's kind of this give and take. So whatever your skill may be, if there's kind of a need for it, if it's a sport, if it's a skill, I don't know, an art, music, whatever, right? Try and use that to your advantage to get in front of people, to add value as well. But that's been the biggest key is the network piece of it. And then, I think energy. Energy is, people like having you around when you bring a lot to the table. It may not be these incredible things, but if you're coming in with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, one of the companies that I was fundraising for, Open Air, the founder just was really excited to have me on board because he saw that I came with this fresh perspective and excitement into the company that he's been building, that over time has kind of lost its flavor just because it's been such a slog. So I think that's also another way to do it is really be enthusiastic, bring the energy up wherever you are. And that's in any industry, any role. Just come with a lot of enthusiasm. And then people are drawn to you. They want to be around you. You create a whole new vibe in the community that you're around.
VCs approach things very similarly. Not, well, in a lot of ways. But I think especially in their hiring process, it's very interesting. So when we're deploying capital in the companies, deal source is just as important as one of the most important factors that they'll look at, because they look at it as pre-qualified, or at least they'll give it eyes before something else that just came organically through their website or whatever it may be. Some you can't even go through their website. You have to find a way to get to them. But I know there's a story when I was looking, I was speaking with another VC. They said, we're looking to hire for this role. I'm like, okay, well, I might know some people. Happy to make some recommendations or anything like that. So I was speaking to someone later that day. Hey, you should check out the website. They have I looked. There was actually not a job posting for it. Anywhere, not on the website. They didn't have a job page, no career page. They had no LinkedIn thing, and they were like, "Yeah, we have like a couple hundred applicants already," and it's like that's all from network, all people that they know for a job that they hadn't posted.
I've got to say, I can testify to that from the bank side, which is
how was it for you with private wealth?
I think to add to that from the bank side, one thing I've been doing at work is trying to increase ties with the leverage finance team. Basically, obviously, LevFin work with a lot of private equity partners and firms. We try and bank private equity partners because they make a lot of money, and it just seems sensible to tie us in. So if we have ties to one firm that they don't have ties to, but they've got ties to a different firm, we can cross-refer. That was the plan anyway. And from speaking to these guys, it's all the same themes come up. Is this person fun? Are they enthusiastic? Are they someone I want to sit next to for a long time? But also, by the time even internally these jobs get posted on the internal job board, they're filled. They know who they want to hire because someone internally has been meeting them for coffees for 6 months. They've met the team.
Yeah.
They've probably produced a model or something and shown hey, I don't work in your department, but I'm roughly up to speed as much as I can be. Give me a shot. So it is hyper competitive. But at the same time, I want to just bring it back to one point on networking, because it's easy to say network, but for someone who's never done it before, it's probably actually quite confusing what that means. How do you maintain a network? And you got some interesting feedback, I remember, a few months ago. And you'd done something, no offense, but quite simple, just follow up. And they said, you're one of 2 VCs that actually followed up 6 months later or something, out of 100.
It's a crazy concept of following up, doing what you say. Maddening. You help where you can. I mean, it's a fine line. I have a friend who he has this habit of making promises all the time. Promises that people, especially promises that people didn't ask for, could kind of go the other way. You have to understand your own capabilities, your own reach, and doing those things. But like, yeah, if you follow up, if you do what you're gonna say, and people will respect that, and it will take you a long way.
Actually, one thing just to add to this is also, where possible, being ready to add value. If you're trying to break into somewhere, networking your way and meeting these people, and then if they say, okay, cool, can you produce me a model? And you go, I haven't actually learned how to model yet, I was waiting to see if I got anywhere, is definitely the wrong way to go about it. So you've got to try and keep your tools and your skills sharp, so that when you get the opportunity...
Emotional intelligence is the word.
Is that EQ, would you say?
100%. All EQ. Can you read a room? Do you know when's the right time to ask the question? Do you know when's the right time to follow up with someone? What's been going on in their personal life? What's been going on at work? My gosh, everything is EQ. Can you walk to a room in the morning at work and sense the mood? Come back from lunch. Can you, if you can't read a room properly, I mean, you're not going to be invited back, or people aren't going to want to bring you places.
That's why conferences are so interesting.
Yeah,
they are. You get the full spectrum.
Well, on that point though, when I met Ken, I'll never forget it. We were at an event, and this poor guy, he was like one of 4 VCs there, and I was trying to have a conversation with him, and there were these founders with just no...
I call them fans.
Just no emotional intelligence, and just kept interrupting, and
it's nuts.
It's incredible. And if you're a founder, you need to have emotional intelligence.
Oh, dude, I was at a conference today, and like, everyone has their badge, right?
Yeah.
You can tell who's a founder, who's an investor, whatever. And like, this one dude came up to me, like, I'm talking with someone, like, he says, hey, and then he looks like dead at my badge, looks up to me, and does double take. How are you doing? And I'm just like, guy, like I can't knock it, but you at least got to be low about it. You can't So and that's the emotional intelligence thing too, because like now I'm just like, who is this guy? Well, this is like kind of weird, and I also kind of lose a bit of respect, I guess. I don't know.
You're in the middle of a conversation. I hate it. Don't do it.
And look, like, no one's saying this is easy. We've all been the awkward person in a room that's like scared to start a conversation, or you don't know how to carry yourself. That is part of professional growth. But there are certainly some people that perhaps could do with a couple of one-on-ones and pointers more so than others.
CF Div Sweeps networking masterclass.
But how, with the finance world and how I was able to also break in, I think I'm not heavily analytical. I'm not the best numbers guy in the room, if hardly the best numbers guy in the room. But I'm client facing. I'm people facing. That's why I have an investor relations role, because I'm trusted with speaking to these individuals in order to raise money. And that's what I would like to say. Anyone who's trying to break into VC who had a similar background to me, is that you do not need to be heavily analytical. You need to obviously have an understanding of these key elements.
No.
But if you are very much more of a people person and social facing, and like having conversations and networking, then investor relations is definitely something that you should look at. And I didn't even know it was a role. I didn't even know it was a thing. So yeah, I'm trying to develop my technical side more, because then I can be a much stronger whole-rounded person in VC, right? But just breaking in, you don't need to just be one or the other. If you're too analytical, develop your commercial skills more, because then you can have better conversations, right? With founders, with investors, you can then raise money easier, and same the other way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In this industry, everyone is selling to each other at all times.
That's true.
I mean, whether it's from selling to fundraise on a deal, or like sometimes if you're in a really hot deal, how are you going to get yourself on the cap table, right? Because like, why is this founder going to take your money when they have every Tom, Dick, and Harry willing to, write them a check?
Yeah. And then founders, like the very technical founders who can create an incredible product, but they just can't raise. They don't know how to talk to VCs. They can't commercialize anything. But yeah, it's interesting. We can touch upon this for hours, mate. But
No, I agree. I think sales creeps into pretty much every role. And certainly the higher up you get, the more it turns to relationship management. One thing I learned in my old research role was I thought it was solely about like researching companies, right? So I picked a company, Long story short, it did really well, but it was like a profitless, it's just a profitless tech company basically. Stock did phenomenally, right? Went up over tenfold. But I didn't really have the EQ, I suppose, as a young analyst at the time to recognize that like I had to pitch this product, like pitch the stock to the actual people doing the investing. Like, who's our typical investor? Are these people that want to invest in profitless tech companies? And so just to like bring what you guys have said to, I suppose, my world, I think having like a very honest conversation with yourself about what are your skills, but also like, what are you trying to get out of this in terms of what do you need from this conversation? What do you need from this people? And like, is what you are pitching suitable? And that's where I think the sales and EQ thing comes in, because you may think you're in a technical role and you may think that you produce the best, could be anything, could be algorithm, research report, whatever. But if you can't convey the work you've done to the person above you, it's probably not going to go very far. On this EQ thing, I just thought I'd do a quick shout out to a friend of the pod, Lauren Dudley at Auxo. So she's a female founder. She does like a social media management firm, like an agency. Mm-hmm. She is by far and away one of the best people I know in terms of EQ and reading a room. And she has like grown Auxo at great pace.
How much has she raised?
I know you're testing me.
Yeah.
I think it'd been going for a year and she already had over 10 employees. I don't know if she's bootstrapped it or raised capital. Okay. But obviously,
it's just good to know because...
Yeah. I actually, is one thing I took from her was just how important that was in her role. Mm. And I never assumed it would be as a founder. But she was like, how do you think I get all my leads? How do you think I get all my clients? How do you think I get the staff I want to get? It's because I'm like really attentive to what resonates with them. And that's what I pitched them. And then I work on the other side of that is she said she worked really hard to provide it. Mm. So you can't just, as you say, just promising to not deliver. You have to find out what people want. And then if you're really like passionate and you want to be successful, you have to give that to them.
Sure.
So I think it's worth touching on what Div Sweeps really is and what we're trying to get out of it, how people can get involved, those kind of things. Ken, do you want to just take a stab at it?
Yeah, for sure. So at our core, we're a community, right? And I think we bring together this members aspect of it because we want to make sure we're able to curate each event to be familiar faces. I mean, like the industry is always about who you know. But how many times, you can't keep up with everyone just on a call. Nobody wants to have a quarterly call. Nobody wants to have a monthly call realistically. Like even today I went to an event that a lot of, like every 6 months, but everyone there, a lot of familiar faces. You cover a lot of ground in about 2 or 3 minutes. And that's kind of what we kind of create, that kind of ecosystem where, you gather a night with people, catch up with them in a few minutes, or longer, and that's kind of how a thing. We have a lot of people that are just kind of breaking into their careers and just trying to really understand what it is to be in this industry, and then also understanding what else is out there in terms of landscape. And you can do that because we have everyone else in the landscape there as well. We have some of the top firms all the way down in terms of the value chain. We kind of cover all of it with our time membership right now. I mean, we started with what?
7 of us,
6, 7 people in January, and now we're already at a little over 40, and it's grown immensely well. It's resonated really well, and we also give back. In these, we do presentations with schools, also startup hubs. Talk about. We have one coming up about private wealth. How to what the sell side looks like. How to be a capital efficient founder. Things we would have known had we started this, knowing what we know now on this side of the table. And we do that with schools and startup hubs, and it's
now on the podcast.
And now on a podcast as well. We're trying to outsource it to the fans, as some would say. But I think that's kind of what it is. It's a community of individuals where we like to have fun, but we're also very curious. And we also want to give back.
Yeah, I think that sums it up quite neatly, which is, we bring together people from IB, P, VC mostly, but there's me and private wealth, and we've got quite a few traders.
Family office too.
Family offices, yeah. So in that sort of deal flow environment mostly. And great coverage, I would say, to be fair. We got all the major banks, Goldman, JP Morgan, Barclays. I mean, huge firms. So great coverage. Obviously, it's growing. And I think one thing that's been really cool is, I had someone reach out to me the other day asking to get involved and basically saying they felt there was a real gap in the market for it, which is...
Well, there is. Yeah. 100%. I think... Yeah, there's not enough spots for especially young people in the financial world to build a network at a younger age. I mean, we're always thinking, okay, I need a network with people older than me, or, you know, trying to get ahead. But actually, we've got, I'd say, this real niche where we're building very close relationships with people across so many different areas of finance. And as Div Sweeps progresses, and our membership continues to grow, so will the quality of our members, right? And so we're making long-lasting friendships through the group that we've created. And I think that's going back to the network and emotional intelligence and, you know, forwarding your career. Yeah, it's a social but also a very professional environment, which is what we're all about.
Yeah, and I think also when you're starting out your career and you join one of these large multinational institutions, it's very easy to get swallowed up in like the idea of networking when it comes to networking within your own institution where you're in this own ecosystem, which in some respects is fine, right? But you know, if you ever find yourself in some kind of redundancy, you're sheltered. You have some kind of redundancy, which many people have you know, in these past few months. Where do you go? You can't. Your odds of networking back in very low. So that's why it's always good to know who else is on the playing field or in the arena.
Yeah, but we're very selective. You know, we're very selective with, you know, who we're letting in, because we're getting some people apply, but, you know, not everyone kind of fits the
beer test.
Yeah, the beer or the
culture.
The culture that we're trying to create. And that's why we've had the success we have had so early on and so quickly, is because of the people we're bringing into the room. And like we're doing here, it's all about who you can put together to make something a success.
I think what we want is to get people in a room, and it feels like you sort of have a choice to make. Like, you can either spend a night with your friends on Thursday, in which case you probably don't get any meaningful career development, but you have a good time, or you go to like a career development kind of networking event. Very serious, very stale.
Might meet one or two guys or girls.
At best, you get one or two.
Yeah.
And
they negotiate.
Yeah. Surely there's a way, which is what we're trying to do.
Which is what we're doing.
Making it like fun and development at the same time. And that's why we're selective, because we want people to come, have a beer, have a good time, but also actually leave with like a actionable connection.
We're building something that's going to last.
Yeah, and that's why even with the intake, we being helpful and being like, outgoing and like wanting to help. It's like, you know, what would you like out of this group? And, you know, if you could tell a lot by the answer someone gives. Usually, if it's a selfish one, they're like, oh, I'm gonna network and meet people and do this other thing. Probably a cultural fit. And usually, it's been kind of spot on based on answers, something like that. Or we had one person who's like, I want to find clients, and I was like, come on, dog. Like this.
Yeah, that's something that. So on our membership form, we have the question is, how can you benefit the group? So how can you give back? So then we're getting the nice ebb and flow.
Yeah, and I think it's going well.
Very well.
We've got
it's amazing.
Some good plans. Can we say that we were at Blue Marlin?
Yeah, exactly.
I think I just did. So we had some nice members clubs. We've got some sponsors, which means obviously free drinks. Everyone has a good time. Can throw on some events. Talks of a tennis party organised by guess who. And Jack. And Jack is very keen. But no, we want to do, like, again, it comes back to this. We want people, first and foremost, you know, especially in time as it grows, to have connections, have deal flow, have career development. But we also want it to be fun, right? We want people to like let their hair down a bit.
Yeah.
You know, have like a fun summer party, or just come to like a nice members club they wouldn't normally get into, have a couple of drinks, and like not feel they're in that stale environment. Yeah, so in this episode, it's mostly just Ken, Josh, and I covering who we are and the wider Div Sweeps ecosystem. But in future, it's really going to go sort of two ways. We're going to have a lot of guest interviews with some really inspiring people, you know, partners at private equity firms, people that build a business, hedge fund managers, that kind of thing. And a few episodes of us being a bit more jovial than we might be this episode, but just covering things in the news, mostly in the sort of VC space, and hopefully just sort of, you know, up-to-date content, but with a sort of typical Div Sweeps style. So, you know, serious people in unserious conversations. Best example, probably the guys from Chiron Sports Group next week, which was, you know, it's going to be super interesting. They're basically involved in private equity takeovers and advisory.
Takeovers is quite an aggressive term in private equity.
They're LBOs in a sports industry.
Buying stakes in sports clubs and getting involved operationally to turn them around or make them high performing. They've taken clubs up in promotion, they've built ties across clubs, across sports, and they just offer such a fascinating insight into quite a unique part of private equity and high finance. So thank you guys for joining for this episode. It's been short, but hopefully it's given you an insight into who we are and what we plan to do with this. Ken, Josh, it's been fun. It's been nice to be with you this Monday.
It's been real, mate.
Anything for the fans?
Follow Div Sweeps on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We got some exciting content coming out. Our membership form is there as well if you're looking to inquire. And we got some events this summer, which we look forward to.
Yeah, Ken, end on a teaser, because you've been working hard on membership and venue side, and we've got some exciting things coming up.
Yeah. I mean, we have some really exciting sponsors in the pipeline. Shout out to Flow, always good friends of the pod, as it were. And yeah, got some nice rooftop events coming up in the summer. We're looking forward to. So if you're looking to have some good networking that's not too over the top, yeah, come join us.
Thanks, guys, and yeah, see you next week.